Hello, my name is Luke, and thank you for joining us for the Mountain View Writing Center's presentation on saying what you mean and explaining what you don't. This is part 3 of the Writing Center's College Preparedness Presentation Series. Meaning to say something and saying it are often two different things, especially when it comes to writing. The less you have your audience figure out, the better they will receive your argument. Remember, your audience does not live in your head. They don't know what reasons you hold. They might hold different reasons. So make sure that you do not assume they know how your reasons connect to your thesis. When we think about problems of miscommunication, we might think of the example of how often you have in the past said to a peer or a professor, "What I meant was this," or "I actually meant to say that." There could be a number of reasons why we end up in this situation. They could simply misunderstand what you were saying. You could not have fully explained something. You could assume that they would make the connections for you. You could have grammatically unclear writing, or you could simply have poorly chosen words. In the event that they misunderstood you, it might seem like there's nothing you can do about this, but you can. When writing, it's important to think about your audience's expectations. That is, what sort of argument, evidence, or examples are they expecting you to come up with? So we should consider the controversy level of our assertions. How much of a change are we asking our audience to make? When we're writing our argument, we need to make sure that we prepare our audience for our reasons and evidence by explaining how they build on one another. And always use appropriate terminology and explain it if necessary. In order to avoid having not explained something, we should make sure to give every reason and every piece of evidence proper explanation. For example, never end paragraphs with quotations. That means you didn't explain it after you gave it. Don't move from one reason to the next without fully explaining the first. And keep paragraphs on target by making sure to include sufficient analysis for all parts. That is, after we give our topic sentence and our examples, we need to make sure to provide the context not only for why those examples are in the paper at all, but how they connect to the thesis. Often when we're writing, we have a very clear connection from our reasons to our thesis in our heads. The audience, however, does not always share that reasoning. So when we're writing, or in the eventuality that we are revising, we need to make sure that nothing is left in your head. That is there something you need to say to clarify what's going on that you know in your head and you are hoping the audience will think with you? Well, if that's the case, we need to just go ahead and write it out. Always transition between related ideas and show how they're related. Don't assume the audience will have the same relation in mind as you do. And then remind your audience of your overall goal and connect your reasons to it. In the event that the miscommunication comes from poor grammar or syntax, make sure that you are an active learner. Pay attention to grammar issues or problems your peers and professors point out on a regular basis. If you're aware of such issues, look them up in a writing handbook. Practice making the corrections yourself. Teach yourself to recognize the issues in your own writing. Don't worry when you write, however. Worry when you edit. So if you know you have a problem with, for example, comma splices, take the initiative. Look up what a comma splice is. That way, when you're revising your own writing, you can recognize the problem and fix it. When we're writing and when we're revising, we need to make sure that we have deliberately chosen our words to be the best ones for our meaning. The first advice is, stick to words for which you actually know the meanings. If you use a word from a thesaurus, make sure you know its connotations and denotations, since these can often change the meaning of the sentence. Keep it simple. Use is just as good as utilize. And consider replacing words if they don't quite carry the meaning you want. For instance, fuming instead of very angry. In general, very is not your friend. There's usually another word that means the very version of whatever word you're trying to use. So we've talked about some problems. Let's address some solutions. The first one of these is to keep your main goal in mind. You think about considerations like, what are the requirements of the assignment? What is your end goal for the paragraph or paper? When editing, make sure to remind yourself of your goals. And always keep your audience in mind. What do they think they know? What do you need to explain to them? And don't just write what you think they want to hear. Write what you want them to hear. It's your argument, and you need to be convincing them of whatever thesis you're advancing. The next thing to keep in mind is to anticipate audience reactions to the things that you're saying. If they're going to have objections or questions, we need to incorporate those into the paper. Will they be receptive to your examples? If not, can you explain why they should be? Will they agree with your reasons? If not, will your examples and explanations change their minds? And will they be convinced by your thesis? If not, do you need to find other reasons to support your position? So there are many levels in which the audience might react positively or negatively to your argument. We need to keep each of these in mind as we write and revise. An additional step that we need to take in our analysis is to explain what we don't mean. As counterintuitive as that might sound, explaining what you don't mean is often helpful for your audience. Let them know how to interpret what you say. Don't get me wrong, I don't mean that. Some might think I mean, but actually, I argue. Position yourself in response to the rest of the conversation about your issue. If you make it clear what others are saying, and you make it clear how you are agreeing or disagreeing with those people, your argument should be much clearer for your audience. When thinking about interacting with those other positions, we need to make sure that we don't simply agree with others. Few things are as likely to disappoint your professor as analysis that says nothing. If you give a quote or an example and you say something like, "This quote is right," or "I completely agree with this quote," or if the thesis for your whole paper is something like, "In this paper, I will show why Dr. Brown is right," more than likely, your professor will be disappointed. Instead of just agreeing, explain why you agree, and add your own interpretation. Thank you for watching this presentation on saying what you mean and explaining what you don't. If you need any help in writing or revising your paper, please come in and see us at the Academic Center for Writing in W114.